Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to impartially map out a highly debated and honestly fascinating set of physiological theories step by step. We're looking at source material based on Dr. George Tawfik's comprehensive lecture. And let me tell you, it offers a radically different perspective on metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and human aging.
So, for about 100 years now, insulin has been widely celebrated as this life-saving medical marvel, right? But what if we've been looking at it backwards? The source material we're exploring today posits a super unconventional view. It frames insulin not as a remedy, but actually as a potential biological danger. It essentially asks us to look at the human body as a complex machine where hormones are constantly battling for control, and it places insulin right at the center of the crossfire. To understand this framework, we'll follow the exact chronological journey of a single bite of food. We'll cover the dual hormonal response, insulin's direct role, the histamine reaction, the hormonal conflict, and finally, the proposed solution. Okay, starting off with section 1, the dual hormonal response, or what the source calls the insulin era. Now check out how this model divides our body's hormones into two completely opposing camps. The source argues that the moment food enters your stomach, your hormones literally split perfectly into two groups acting in complete opposition. For roughly 2 hours during digestion, a very specific set of hormones is activated. We're talking insulin, gastrin, serotonin, and histamine. But meanwhile, vital repair and growth hormones like glucagon, growth hormone, testosterone, and cortisol, they are entirely suppressed. And this table, straight from the official summary documents, really illustrates that exact divide. So during this active insulin era, you might feel relaxed and happy, right? Because serotonin is active, gastrin is spiking your stomach acid, and histamine begins immune reactions based on what you just eat. But crucially, because those growth and repair hormones are completely suppressed, the body's natural regenerative processes are just put completely on hold. Moving right along to section 2, insulin's direct role, which is all about storage over safety. Now here's where things get really interesting. In this framework, insulin is completely stripped of its lifesaver status. Instead, it's viewed strictly as a biological storage mechanism. The lecture explicitly argues against the whole idea of insulin being a hero. It's described strictly as a hormone with only one real job. It takes the sugar and protein you just absorbed and converts it directly into trapped fat and glycogen, locking it away in the liver, your muscles, and your viscera. And according to the lecture, insulin doesn't just store energy, it slams the doors shut and locks them. By actively blocking fat-burning enzymes like lipase and kinase, your body is effectively stopped from consuming fat for energy. Furthermore, the model argues that insulin actually halts the liver from synthesizing vital proteins like albumin and completely stops the production of beneficial HDL and LDL cholesterol. And those are materials absolutely needed for maintaining healthy cells, nerves, and skin. That brings us to section 3. The histamine reaction, or the inflammatory trigger. So alongside insulin, histamine is pumping through your system. The model posits that things we normally consider perfectly healthy staples, eggs, dairy, wheat, actually trigger a massive immune response, shifting your body into a state of chronic alert. The source claims that these specific items, along with fried foods, sodas, and even taking morning stomach antacids, cause the body to demand vast amounts of energy to create inflammatory cells and antibodies. As mapped out here, the source document warns that we actually misinterpret the signals of this histamine spike all the time, basically just brushing them off as everyday annoyances. Think about waking up with swollen fingers where your rings feel unexpectedly tight. Well, the model suggests these aren't just random quirks of aging, but direct, measurable signals of histamine-driven inflammation. Random hot flashes, a dry mouth and eyes, an elevated heart rate. According to the lecture, your body is reacting to the food as if it were a literal threat, sort of like a localized allergic reaction that demands immediate attention. Which leads perfectly into section 4, the hormonal conflict, the battle inside. Okay, so here's how this crazy internal battle plays out. First, your immune system is fighting the histamine trigger and demands massive amounts of glucose for energy. Then, your stress hormone cortisol tries to fetch this glucose from your fat and liver stores. But remember, insulin has locked those doors by shutting down those lipase and kinase enzymes. So desperate for energy, cortisol is forced to scavenge. It literally breaks down your own muscle, bone, and cartilage to create sugar. And the tragic finale here? Well, insulin is still active in the blood, so it steals this newly scavenged sugar and indiscriminately converts it straight into visceral belly fat before your immune system can even use it. Listen to this quote straight from the source material because it really summarizes the severe stakes. The lecture blames this precise hormonal conflict, cortisol desperately breaking you down, while insulin arbitrarily storing the spoils as fat, for the literal erosion of bones and joints, the loss of muscle mass, and the dangerous hardening or sclerosis of your arteries. It paints this incredibly vivid picture of the body literally consuming its own structural foundation. Let's move on to Section 5, the proposed solution, known as the Tayabat concept. This is where the proposed Tayabat rules basically flip conventional dietary advice totally on its head with a three-pronged approach. First, provide the body with pure sugar. Yes, you heard that right. The logic in the lecture is to supply immediate, easily accessible energy to the nervous and immune systems so cortisol stops breaking down your muscles and bones. Second, stop histamine triggers entirely by completely banning dairy, eggs, and wheat to calm that immune response. And third, purposefully stop the constant flow of insulin by strictly spacing out your meals, allowing that insulin era to end so the liver can finally regenerate and burn fat. Looking at the conclusion from the documents, the model argues that breaking this destructive cycle of insulin and histamine is the absolute physiological key to preventing the premature aging of tissues and nerves. It claims that maintaining liver health and allowing regenerative hormones like growth hormone and glucagon to finally do their jobs without insulin getting in the way is the true secret to preserving the youth of our tissues. It really leaves us pondering a massive paradigm shift, doesn't it? If we view our bodies through this controversial lens, where insulin is a barrier to healing and pure sugar is framed as a protective energy source, what else might we be getting wrong about the delicate, complex balance within our own biology? That's the super provocative question Dr. Tawfik's model leaves us to consider. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this deep dive into the source material has given you something truly fascinating to think about.